What is it? What can they do to develop that abundance mindset, to think more in terms of, having this growth versus fixed mindset?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing you have to understand is you have to get to a principle-based living. Okay. So I'm a big fan of the word principle.
Allan has started and grown several multi-million-dollar businesses. His mission is to help you do the same. Welcome to the Business Growth Pod, building the future one entrepreneur at a time.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Business Growth Pod. I'm your host, Allan Draper. So thankful that you're spending time with me today. I know how valuable my time is. I know that yours is the same. So how does someone go from high school dropout and homelessness to owning 7 companies that generate tens of millions of dollars in revenue and employ hundreds of people? That is the simplified bio of today's guest, Stephen Scoggins. Stephen is an entrepreneur, host of the Unstoppable with Stephen Scoggins podcast, as well as a father and grandfather. So we're excited to hear more about Stephen's story today and some of the lessons that he's learned along his journey. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us.
Man, simply my pleasure. I know I don't necessarily look like a grandfather, but it is a reality.
I was going to say, you look about my age, give or take. So yeah. That's awesome. How is being a grandfather, how has that been different for you? What's your experience been like compared to being a father?
The good news is you can take the kids up and shake them and hand them to somebody else.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, the grandchildren tend to be more fun. So they don't call me granddad or anything like that. I'm called Pops. So Pops is still technically cool.
Okay.
It goes with the feel. No, but it's been awesome. It's one thing to steward a child to adulthood. It's another thing to just affectionately love on a grandchild. And I think the biggest gift is the fact that you don't have necessarily the deep responsibility of rearing or creating a future leader or a future, husband, wife, etc. With a grandchild, you get to help your children learn to steward and learn to be great parents. And I think that's the biggest difference, right? Because if you think about it, most of us, and listen, as part of my backstory, most of us are parented in such a ways based on that parent's level of understanding, right? Their level of experience or level of perspective, and that kind of thing. Whereas, nowadays in today's environment, we can teach people to parent well, teach people to empower, inspire, encourage, mentor well, so hopefully I'm doing a little bit of the same between the kids and the grandkids.
That's awesome. Your story is an inspirational one. It's crazy to hear that you dropped out of high school and you've kind of arrived at the point where you are today on your journey. Let's talk about that a little bit. Take me back to that moment. What was it that, got you to that point where you dropped out of high school? What were you facing? I want to get inside your mind at that point and where it's brought you today.
Man, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's funny. I don't get to share that part of my story that often. In fact, when I was going through that particular time in my life, I got a lot of hate mail, as you can imagine, from, people that I was going to high school with and, high school kids that I knew, their parents, and nobody asked me what was going on. Nobody asked me why I dropped out. Nobody asked me anything. And the short answer was I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. My father was a hard worker. He wasn't great with finance. And as a result, made probably some pretty questionable financial decisions along the way. So much so that it led to, waking up in the morning, you're trying to get ready to go to school or whatever. And then, either having cold water or no water. Okay. Lights or no lights. The reality is for me, I think I just got tired of not having a healthy level of expectation about just a normal everyday life. Right. Because when they come and shut off your power, your cable or your telephone or whatever, and this is back in the day before we had, cell phones, it's like the cords were connected to the wall.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. I think I had enough of having enough. We didn't have a family car. The one we had got repossessed, a few months earlier. And I don't know. I felt like my dad was working as hard as he possibly could, but we weren't gaining any ground. And as a result, I maybe did what I hindsight being 2020 is questionable. Should I have done it? Should I have tried to step into a parental role model? Should I have taken responsibility to provide for the family, et cetera? And whether the answer is yes or no, I can't be sure. But one thing I am sure of is that started me on a journey of learning how to be a very quick and a very astute problem solver, getting very resourceful, very quick, very early. And, one of the things that I realized we needed is finance. We need food. We need, your basic shelter, et cetera. And I decided in that moment to go ahead and drop out of high school and immediately went to work for a trash company called Waste Industries and was delivering trash cans. And within a few months of being there, I was made an assistant manager and, just basically barely a young adult. And I just started seeing the pieces about maybe some leadership development and stuff like that. And it's all baby steps,
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about kind of this analysis of whether you regret it, right? Whether it was the quote unquote right move. And I actually went to law school and I practiced law for a while before I started my first business about a decade ago. And I get that question a lot, especially from younger individuals that are trying to consider whether to go to college or get a job, get some experience. And they ask me, hey, do you regret going to law school? And law school is very expensive. And I think regret's too strong of a word. And I think part of it for me, Stephen, is that I don't know that if I take that chunk out of my life, then I'm where I am now. I don't know. And so because of that risk, there's no way. And I think when we, as individuals, especially when we're talking about trials, especially when we're talking about failures or mishaps or mistakes or, these challenges that we have, I think we should be really slow to think, hey, I wish it was different.
Yeah.
Because we get so much out of them. And it's clear that you were able to do that. Not only did you drop out of high school, there was some homelessness involved that wasn't necessarily a direct result of dropping out. And, you actually had made a lot of money after leaving high school. Tell me a little bit about that and what you learned from that experience.
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos to you for bringing up your story as well, because I feel like a lot of people cast their story aside and they don't fully accept the benefit of what the story is or what it brings to the table. And I'm very thankful you did that because I feel like the audience needs to hear that it's okay to be where you are, right? And that's part of the acceptance phase. But for me, the homelessness started as more of a foolish behavior from an arrogant kid. When you go through a situation where you don't have much repeatedly, and then you're given an opportunity to earn a lot of money really quickly, but your character is not yet at a place where that you can steward that money well, you end up focusing your energy and your intensity on the insecurity. So everything that comes out of you is arrogant, braggadocious. It's look at the car. Listen, this is back in the day we used to have the sound system, so the back end of the car would shake up and down, right? You would get immediate gratification early on. You're driving the sports car, so you feel important. You've got a nice looking lady sitting beside of you, so you feel important, right? You're able to go buy your parents or someone you love a nice gift, so you feel important. And lo and behold, if you do that long enough and your character is not built with it, you end up doing what I did and just become very prideful and very arrogant in general. Now, I believe that anyone who lives in that zone will ultimately be humbled because it's not healthy to live in that zone, especially a long period of time. And I met a brown-eyed girl, and she took me for a ride of my life, including helping me get tens of thousands of dollars in debt, severe depression, almost took my life along that same journey, and ultimately leading me into a homeless environment. Now, I literally walked away from a job site, if you will, from an environment or from something that was given to me that was a gift. Now, this is one of those times where had I known what I know now, I would have capitalized on that first attempt at success, so to speak, and just tempered my heart and my soul a little bit, not to be so, self-absorbed is probably the easiest way to explain it. Lo and behold, that leads me to the homeless factor. Can't pay the rent, can't pay the bills, get kicked out of where I'm living at, and then couch surf all the way until ultimately I find myself finally in a public restroom in a local gym, and finally caught my eyes. I'm like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like, what the heck? Like, you have this mentorship from this guy named Steve Myrick. I call him, refer to him as Old Man Myrick. You have this mentor that was willing to give you everything. Not only did he give you a shot, he give you the resources, give you the tools, give you the equipment, give you everything you need to get going. He also gave me mentorship. He didn't want me to turn into my father or many of my uncles and things of that nature at the time. And he even tried to tell me one time, he said, what is the difference between a rich man and a poor man? I'm like, well, duh, it's money. Of course it's money. He got pretty frustrated with me, and he actually said, no, it's the way they think. And then he asked me, he said, do you want to learn to think like me, or do you want to continue thinking like your father? You see, up until that time, I didn't realize I had a choice. I thought the life that was happening to me was the life that I was destined to live. I didn't realize I could choose what kind of life I wanted to live. I didn't realize I could choose the type of people I wanted to encircle around me. I didn't realize I could choose poverty or abundance. I just didn't know, right? That moment in time came flashing back like a flood in that quick moment in the gym, like looking at myself in the gym mirror. And it wasn't terribly far after that I found my faith and then got the second chance that I didn't deserve, that then became the first of the 7 businesses.
You know, your story is interesting because it sounds like you had your own personal rich dad, poor dad experience, like Robert
basically,
Kiyosaki, right? And talking about how this concept of being wealthy is a mindset. That's the difference. And I mean, I agree with that with my whole heart. I've experienced that in my life. And the really cool thing about it is that, you know, I'm involved in several business ventures. If something happens, if my mind's in the right spot, if I have a wealthy mindset, I can do it again. It wasn't because of one particular company. It was because of my mind, right? That's kind of the reassuring aspect of it. I grew up in a small farming community on the Oregon-Idaho border, town of about 2,000 people, mostly farmers, factory workers, things like that. I live in the Phoenix area now, but every summer it's a lot cooler in Idaho. We go visit Idaho for a couple of months while our kids are out of school. And one thing, Stephen, that I've noticed is that the same people I grew up with that I still love, that are still a big part of my life, family, friends, this tight-knit community, I noticed how differently they approach abundance and wealth. And it's just in the things they say and how they act, and not to take shots at them, because I love them and they're a part of my life.
It's where they're at. It's where they are in their own journey. It's okay.
It's just crazy, the disparity between how I think and how I've been groomed to think over the last 2 decades and the typical mindset. Not everybody, but just a lot of the people that are in that area. What is it? There's a listener out there, Stephen, that's thinking, I'm always trying to level up my mentality. What is it? What can they do to develop that abundance mindset, to think more in terms of, having this growth versus fixed mindset?
Well, I think the first thing you have to understand is you have to get to a principle-based living. Okay. So I'm a big fan of the word principle. To me, principle answers questions before they're even asked, right? So I'll give you an example. Everybody says they want to get wealthy financially, but yet they go and spend more than they have on a regular basis and then wonder why they're not wealthy. Well, if they're living by the principle says don't spend more money than you make, right? Which would give you margin. Margin gives you cash. Cash allows you to begin to invest, and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of folks don't realize that first of all, they need to live by principle. The second thing is I don't feel like they fully understand the limitations that are put on them by other people. I'll give you an example. Early in my business career, my father tried desperately to talk me out of starting the business the second time, desperately out of it. And he kept trying to say this one comment that haunted me for, I don't know how many years, but it was a long time. And it was, Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by. Okay. Now keep in mind, when he told me that comment, his heart was broken. He had just lost his business that he poured his heart and his soul into. He had made some errors in judgment, and it cost him his business, and it cost the family the lifestyle, essentially. And the reality is even though he was acting out of love Even though he was acting out of support, even though he thought he was being helpful, he was actually being harmful. Okay. Because he was taking his limiting belief and casting it on me. Okay. Now that's his role in the story. My role in the story is whether or not I choose to believe it.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I believed it for longer than I needed to believe it. You see, people don't fully understand how often they're actually programmed to think and behave the way in which they do it. That's why you can go to New York and you'll hear a different accent, or you might go to California and, everybody's like sunshine and vibes and happy go lucky. You might go to right here in North Kakalaki and you might hear somebody talking like this on a regular basis. Like all of that is programmed behavior based on phonics, based on influence, based on people, based on relationship, based on experience. And because of that, people are sleepwalking through their life, their business, etc. They're going through the motions, not realizing that the motions are created by the reactions, and the reactions are started from the thought, right? So they're automatically responding to whatever stimulus is, whether it's I'm broke, I'm poor, I'm brokenhearted, or whatever. And then they reinforce that same behavior repeatedly on a regular basis because they continue to walk in that same broken cycle day after day after day. What Steve Myrick and other people have done for me, and it sounds like it's also happened to you, is you become aware of one simple thing. You are where you are today because it's all you have allowed yourself to be. And if you want that to be different, you're going to have to change something. Now, for me, changing that was realizing that I'm getting programmed on a regular basis. Once you understand that you're getting programmed, now you have a choice about what program you're going to program. Okay. I'll give you an example. Most of my mornings start 5:30. I start in prayer and meditation. So I say, pray to say, meditate to listen. Part of that approach is a very simple, very nonchalant mantra, which is, I am happy, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, and I'm a steward of the Most High. I'm saying those things to myself, sometimes physically out loud, because I need to hear myself programming myself. So when someone tells me I'm less than or incapable of, I remind myself the truth that I choose to identify, which is I am happy, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, I'm a steward of the Most High. By identifying that, I start to put myself in a healthier mindset as well as an act of obedient service, right? So the things that you say to yourself, most people on average would never say to anybody else. The negative things that we tell ourselves about ourselves on a regular basis, right? It used to bug the crap out of me. I was going bald, right? And now it's like one of my most known features, right? Rather than accepting I am where I am today because it's all I've allowed myself to be. And if I want to become something more, I need to do something more. That doing is the programming piece. Like what is going to your eyes and your ears on a regular basis? What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? I don't know about you, but I'm kind of a gym rat. In early days when I was working out all the time and stuff like that, I got kind of bulky and whatnot, but consuming protein like I was going out of style, like a Mighty Mouse looking Oompa Loompa. But when I would work out, I would have this grunge or this heavy metal, this like some would call it death metal in my ears, because amping me up to get angry and like I'm running around the gym like I was going to explode. Right. I didn't realize it at the time that an hour later, 2 hours later, 3 hours later, I was more aggressive. I was cursing on a regular basis. Like I was programming myself with negative materials. And when you finally understand that your life is going to be predicated based on your level of programming, you become a lot more intentional about how you program yourself. Because you're either getting programmed on a regular basis by outside external forces, or you are choosing to program yourself on a regular basis. And I don't know about you, but for me, I want to have some level of control in my life and my behaviors and my results. And I do that by programming.
I mean, that's such a good point. And it's something that we have to be very deliberate of, very deliberate with, because something's going to, we're going to internalize, we're going to intake, we're going to hear, we're going to see something. If we're not deliberate about it. And that's the thing, the world works in this way where a lot of it's negative. A lot of it is, our human nature is to think bad thoughts, to say negative things about ourselves. And so we definitely need to be more deliberate about that. I love the story of your dad. And it hits home with me, and it reminds me a lot of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was putting my neck out on this business opportunity. And I remember, and it came from a place of love from him.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to become kind of the villain in my story.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing it because he wanted to protect me from failure. But I remember him saying that, he said, everything that glitters ain't gold. I remember him saying that. And it's true, right? Not everything is what it's made out to be sometimes, or what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the meaning behind what he said, which is don't get your hopes up, right?
Yeah.
Very similar to what was it? Scoggins, don't
get ahead, they get by. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And that's the thing, is that I got to the point within the last 10, 15 years where I made a rule for myself. And that rule is, I don't take advice from people, and I don't listen to people that I wouldn't proverbially trade places with. So if it's somebody at the gym that's in great physical shape, and they're giving me advice about, my lifts, or what, how I should be eating, I'm going to listen to that person. But if that individual is broke, even if they're a family member, even if they're somebody that's really close to me, which is hard to do sometimes because that carries a lot more weight. But if that individual is broke and they're giving me financial advice, I'm not rude about it, Stephen. I'm not like, oh, I'm in a better position than you. Like, I'm just like, hey, I appreciate that. I know you care about me, and I appreciate you expressing that, but I do not take it to heart. And I think that's one way that we change our family tree. And the most important way that we can change our family tree is through changing how we think. If we change how we think, we can change everything else. That's awesome. I love your journey, man.
Appreciate that.
This has been incredible. Like, just kind of hearing about it, tell me a little bit about when you first started your business in 2011. What was it that kind of gave you the self-confidence, the motivation, whatever it was that you were able to put together? Because I speak to a lot of startup entrepreneurs and people that are trying to decide if they're going to take the leap or make the jump, whatever the, analogy is. Mentally, what did you do to prepare yourself to get there where you're actually able to do it?
Well, first of all, a couple of different things. First of all, I took a chance, and I chose to take a chance on me because I knew I governed me. I knew that if I wanted to learn something, I could learn something. So I started the business in 98, incorporated in 2001. And around 2005, I actually started breaking business down into very, very, very simple terms. And I learned that if you can accelerate or master only 5 areas, that you can basically turn any business into a success, right? And when I started going through this, I started understanding these different categories. So then I started kind of spending time in that. So the development phase, developing your product, your idea, your vision, your mission, your core values, like actually doing the work to really decide what your business is going to be when it grows up before you have to spank it kind of thing and you kind of whip it back into shape, if you know what I mean. And then sales, like how are you going to sell the product? Who are you going to sell the product to? How, what are you selling? How are you selling? Like what modality you're using? Is it online? Is it via telephone? Is it handshake? Like what is it? Fulfillment. This is like you getting into the category of understanding that you're going to then take that thing that you sold and now you have to turn around and deliver it to somebody else with excellence, right? And then the next one, which was really, really pivotal that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially early stage ones, get wrong, is the finance category. They think because they have sales that they're profitable. The reality is until you understand your cost, you'll never know your profit. Exactly. And most entrepreneurs never do that. They're just like, I'm busy. I'm making a deal. I'm shaking a hand. I'm doing this thing. And money's coming in. I was talking to a good friend of mine who ended up building a sizable 9-figure business. 4 years ago, he almost put himself out of business because they were so focused on the sales, but not on the delivery, that they were literally turning through customers quicker than they could keep a customer. So if they got 100 customers in a day, they would lose 101. You see what I'm saying? So getting to the place of understanding kind of how it is put together and then the financial model behind it, your cash flow, what is retained earnings, pay your taxes. That's what took my dad's business out from under him. Like these types of things are super important, right? And the last category is what's referred to as raving fan retention. Like how are you going to serve these people with gratitude, with excellence, and with service on a regular basis So much so that they want to continue buying from you. A lot of 5 and 6 figure entrepreneurs, one of the things that they get wrong that's different from an 8 and 9 figure entrepreneur is a 5 and 6 figure entrepreneur is looking for the immediate transaction. I sold it. I'm collecting on it. I'm serving it. Okay. An 8 and a 9 figure is how do I actually take that and turn them into a long time partner? Right? Which creates reoccurring revenue. I say all that to say that when you start to break business down in its simplest forms, it's easy to determine what it is you need to focus on and actually put your leverage point to get the greatest point of lift. And I feel like that's at the core of why many of the businesses after that became increasingly more and more successful over time. And anyway, anytime I've gotten away from here's that word again, the basic fundamentals and principles, my businesses would struggle. Right? So getting super clear on what is you're trying to achieve, how you're going to take it to market, how are you going to actually give that service to somebody else with excellence? How are you going to monitor your financial situation? And then how are you going to have repeat business? If you can manage those things consistently, you're going to build a great business.
I love it. You offer a simple step-by-step guide to help people, conquer obstacles, become unstoppable, kind of clear through some of these hurdles in their lives. Give me, as we're kind of wrapping up here, Stephen, give me an example of that. Let me know where people can go to find that so that they can, get that good valuable resource.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the easiest way is obviously just go to StephenScoggins.com. There's a whole host of resources there that anyone can select from based on where they're at in their journey. I think the most important thing to remember is to always be hungry. Always be hungry. Always be hungry for growth. Always be hungry for the next level, which in some cases might actually be rest. Right? Most of us don't spend enough time in rest and reflection to kind of get there. A lot of people say that, unstoppable is just a word. It's more than that for me. It's a lifestyle. To be unstoppable, it simply means you get up each and every day and you try again. Period. If you're stuck, you're not making progress. That's all that means is when you say I'm stuck, all you're saying is I'm not making progress in this area. Okay. Unstoppable is the opposite. It's I'm consistently making progress, even if the progress is incrementally small. One of the biggest things that I see with entrepreneurs that hold us back, especially early days, is we get very, very impatient. We always think we should be further ahead than we actually are, like clockwork. It doesn't matter what size business you have. Small business, big business, does not matter. Everybody thinks they should be further ahead than they are. The reality was, if you were doing all the things in the right way at the right time in the right order, you would be further ahead than you are. So why not just be thankful for where you're at and look for ways to improve it?
I love that. I was just talking with my buddy this morning at the gym. He was telling me about this relationship that he's in that's going really well and how he had a difficult conversation with her recently. And it reminded me of, I get the question a lot. So I have 19 business partners across different industries and a few different projects. And I get the question a lot, hey, Allan, what are you looking for in a business partner? And I've, to be honest with you, Stephen, I've had some business partners that didn't work out. I've had some businesses that have failed. I've had some business partners that left for other reasons, otherwise successful companies. And the number one thing that I look for, it's not what they can bring to the table instead of, in terms of skill set. It's not necessarily this facade of motivation. It's not, some marketing skills, whatever. The number one thing that I look for is whether or not I believe that individual is going to wake up the next day and try again. Ultimately, that's what business is all about. It's about execution. And you're so right in the days, today's day and age of social media and podcasts and all these things. It's like, what are the numbers, right? I'm going to post this on social media, how many likes, views, whatever. And I'm not kind of saying that those aren't important because they can be, but that's not where our intrinsic value should be placed. Because if it is, we will fail. But if it's placed on something else, and I love that you keep talking about principles. Stephen Covey talks a lot about living a principle life in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about how when you have principles and you make decisions based off those principles, no matter what happens, you won't lose. Man, this conversation has been great. We've gone pretty deep. We've talked about, your story and some of your incredible life experiences. in addition to your website, is there anywhere people should go to kind of follow along in your journey, learn from you, and all the great things that you're putting out there?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to share with you and your audience. I'm kind of like anybody else. I've got social media all over the place. So it's Stephen with a PH, Scoggins. Many times there's an underscore in the middle. I am most active on Instagram. My team is also in my DMs and stuff as well. But for the most part, I try to answer questions related to business, life, etc. And I'd be honored to continue to build a relationship and spend time with you guys.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Stephen. Best of luck in the future, my man.
All right. Appreciate it, buddy. Take care. See ya.
If you have enjoyed today's podcast, please leave us a rating. And for daily inspiration and business tips, follow Allan on Instagram. Until next time, remember, we build the future one entrepreneur at a time.